Holy crap, this one is bad. Once upon a time, the phrase video game adaptation was a recipe for disaster. Studios would make shameless cash grabs of whatever title they could get their hands on, oftentimes scoffing at the very idea of sticking to the source material. The only saving grace would be something that falls into the so bad it's good category, like the original Mortal Kombat or the Van Damme Street Fighter.
Of course!
But the tide finally started to shift a few years back. Directors, writers, and executives who were kids at the turn of the century when gaming exploded had grown up to become the shot callers within Hollywood. And the heavy reliance on popular IPs to create lucrative franchises forced studios to become more open-minded about projects based around video games, realizing that if you make a quality and at least somewhat faithful adaptation, the fandom will flock to whatever you put on screen. It's honestly surprising how long the list of good adaptations has grown over the past decade, from films to animation to prestige TV shows. Mario broke $1 billion last year, we're getting a third Sonic film at the end of this year, that Zelda movie is on the way, Netflix is working on its 6th Castlevania season, Arcane is coming back in November, and shows based on The Last of Us, Fallout, and even Twisted Metal were all freaking great. But now here comes Borderlands to remind us that Hollywood can still pull out a stinker if they're not careful. This thing arrived on Rotten Tomatoes with a whopping single-digit rating and was obliterated when the review embargo dropped on Thursday. And while I can't say for certain it's the worst thing I've seen this year, it's definitely in the running. This is a lazy, lifeless slog of a film. For context, the film was first greenlit way back in 2015, when the franchise had quite a bit more relevance. Lee Winnell was in talks to direct, but the project was stuck in development hell there for a while. Eli Roth eventually signed on to direct, and Craig Mazin, the guy who turned Last of Us into one of HBO's heavy hitters, wrote the screenplay, but filming didn't start until we were a year into the pandemic. Mazin eventually removed his own name from the project, and Deadpool's Tim Miller overtook reshoots while Roth went off to do that Thanksgiving movie from last year. What we wind up getting are incomprehensible first and third acts that look cobbled together in the editing bay, bland action sequences that are actively in a hurry to finish, generic dialogue that feels like placeholders nobody got around to actually writing, and a cast that looks completely checked out. The story is somewhat an adaptation of the original 2010 game. A group of misfits and bounty hunters are on the planet Pandora, no, not that one, looking for a secret vault, no, not those ones, that may or may not hold treasures and ancient technologies of a highly advanced progenitor society. Cate Blanchett's Lilith initially gets sent to the planet on a retrieval mission, but eventually decides to help find the vault alongside Ariana Greenblatt, Kevin Hart, Florian Montagu, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Jack Black as the voice of Claptrap. And I can kind of see what the thought process initially was. The story is kind of a Guardians of the Galaxy by way of Mad Max Fury Road if you squint hard enough, but virtually none of it works. Blanchett looks bored out of her freaking skull from the word go. They seem to have told Kevin Hart to bring none of his usual charisma or comedic timing. Curtis looks like she's internally screaming with every awkward line delivery, and they stuck Florian behind a mask and have him randomly shout out attempts at catchphrases. The humor is Roth's usual lowbrow, immature jokes, and the only time I got a laugh was whenever Claptrap was actively rooting for the other characters to die so he could go home. Let's just say the feeling was mutual. The set design looks cheap and ugly, everybody looks like they're just cosplaying characters from the games, the villain is an absolute nothing burger, and the ending is baffling even if you have played the games. But the movie's biggest crime is that it's just boring. It's not hilariously misguided like Madam Web, or reusing a tired setup like Despicable Me 4. There's just nothing to it. It's not worth getting angry about. It's just 102 minutes I sure as hell ain't getting back. Skip this one, and let's remind Hollywood that the days of crappy video game adaptations need to stay gone. Thanks for watching.